There's been a very long tradition of the Christian Church blaming the Jews, and the basis for this can be seen in the New Testament accounts of the trial of Jesus. The Romans are the unwilling participants who never want to see this, who would stop it if they could. This is completely spurious history.
Researchers have recently uncovered astonishing information. Pontius Pilate, the Roman official known for ordering Jesus' crucifixion, disclosed secrets about Jesus before his death. These revelations challenge our understanding of Jesus as the Son of God. Pilate, a figure deeply connected to Jesus' fate, kept undisclosed details about him until his dying day. What exactly did he reveal? Could there have been a scandal linking them? Join us as we explore the shocking details of Pontius Pilate's letter about Jesus. Pontius Pilate was the fifth governor appointed by the Roman Empire to oversee Judea, serving during the reign of Emperor Tiberius from approximately 26 to 37 AD. Pontius Pilate is best known for being the judge during Jesus' trial and for ultimately deciding to have him crucified. His role in the Christian faith is significant, being mentioned in both the Apostles' and Nicene creeds. In the Gospel accounts, Pilate is portrayed as reluctant to condemn Jesus to death. Interestingly, in Ethiopian Christian tradition, it is believed that Pilate eventually converted to Christianity. He is honored as a martyr and saint, a belief historically shared by the Coptic Church, which celebrates his feast day on June 19th or 25th. Before Pilate issued the order for Jesus' execution, Jesus was brought before Caiaphas, the high priest, who orchestrated a biased trial against him. This trial took place in front of a gathering of religious leaders, including the teachers of the law and elders. Amidst this, one of Jesus' disciples, Peter, followed from a distance. The Sanhedrin, a top Jewish council with 70 members, mainly composed of Sadducees, Pharisees, and priests, led by the high priest, were on a mission to find false evidence against Jesus, desperate to condemn him to death. Despite their relentless search, they came up empty-handed. Eventually, two individuals accused Jesus of threatening to demolish the temple. This accusation stemmed from a previous statement where Jesus claimed he could rebuild the temple in 3 days. However, this was likely a misinterpretation of his teachings about resurrection, as Jesus was metaphorically referring to his own body, which would rise again in 3 days. As tension escalated, Caiaphas, the high priest, confronted Jesus directly, demanding to know if he claimed to be the Messiah, the Son of God. Jesus affirmed this, hinting deeply at his divine nature and future glory, prophesying that they would see him seated at the right hand of God and coming with the clouds of heaven. Caiaphas, a prominent religious leader, condemned Jesus' words as blasphemy, which means showing disrespect to God, especially according to Jewish beliefs. Jesus' claim to be God's son was seen as an insult to God by the Jewish leaders, leading them to find him guilty. They not only condemned him, but also physically attacked him, spitting in his face and beating him. The Jewish leaders had multiple reasons for wanting Jesus dead, primarily because he openly challenged their authority and called them hypocrites. Additionally, they disapproved of his social circle, as he associated with sinners, including prostitutes and tax collectors, whom they viewed as morally impure. Furthermore, Jesus defied their Sabbath laws by performing healings on that day. They also objected to his claims about himself, such as being the Son of God and the promised Savior, which they couldn't accept. After the Jewish leaders deemed Jesus guilty of a crime punishable by death, they had to take him before Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. Interestingly, the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council, lacked the authority to carry out capital punishment at the time, so they needed Governor Pilate's approval to execute Jesus. Their accusations against Jesus were twofold. They claimed he was corrupting their people and urging them to refuse to pay taxes to Caesar. Moreover, they accused him of declaring himself as Christ, a king. However, it's important to note that Jesus never explicitly instructed people to withhold taxes from the Roman authorities. *** Jesus, encounter with Pilate and Herod. *** Pilate, curious, asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus remained composed, acknowledging Pilate's words, but subtly hinting that the label wasn't of his own making. Instead of engaging in a direct response, Jesus chose not to argue with Pilate. Unlike with the Sanhedrin, debating with Pilate seemed futile. Pilate was more concerned with the political implications than the truth Jesus preached. He declared to the chief priests and the crowd that Jesus had committed no wrongdoing, finding no grounds for crucifixion under Roman law. From the Roman perspective, Jesus was innocent and devoid of any legitimate charges. Seeking a way out of the situation, Pilate inquired if Jesus was from Galilee. Upon realizing Herod's jurisdiction over the region, he sent Jesus to Herod Antipas, who ruled over Galilee during that time. Herod Antipas, son of Herod the Great, held authority from 4 BC to 39 AD. However, his power in Jerusalem was limited compared to his father and brother who once ruled there. Although he might have owned some property in Jerusalem, it's unlikely he was there for religious reasons, as he wasn't particularly known for his piety. His presence in Jerusalem could have boosted his image, and many people in Galilee might have known about it, and possibly supported him. The Bible tells us that when King Herod finally met Jesus, he was very happy because he had wanted to meet him for a long time. Herod had heard a lot about Jesus and was excited to see some of the miracles he was said to perform. However, when Herod tried to talk to Jesus, Jesus remained silent, which frustrated Herod. Meanwhile, the religious leaders continued to strongly accuse Jesus. The situation was rather strange. Herod knew about Jesus and his activities in Galilee because he was concerned about his safety and had a well-established spy network. Previously, Herod saw John the Baptist as a threat, especially after John condemned his marriage to Herodias. Although Herod wasn't particularly concerned with morals, he was aware that many people in Galilee disapproved of his marriage for moral and political reasons. Despite some Pharisees warning Jesus that Herod wanted to kill him, Herod never took any action against Jesus. Herod was only curious about Jesus and not interested in religion. Because Herod wasn't genuinely interested, Jesus didn't bother answering his questions. Herod and his followers mocked Jesus, treating him badly and even dressing him in fancy clothes before sending him back to Pilate. Jesus had to appear before Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee and Perea. Herod, intrigued by Jesus' fame, hoped to see a miracle, but Jesus remained silent, showing he didn't care about Herod's curiosity. Feeling disrespected by Jesus' indifference, Herod's curiosity turned into strong dislike, leading him to treat Jesus with contempt and ridicule. To mock Jesus, Herod had his soldiers dress him in fancy clothes, sarcastically acknowledging the claim that Jesus might think he was a king. This act of mockery wasn't just about making fun of Jesus. It was also a way for Herod to display his own power and assert his superiority over Jesus. It was a strategic move to maintain his reputation and control, especially when faced with someone perceived as a threat. Additionally, the relationship between Herod and Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, was complicated. Even though they didn't get along initially, dealing with Jesus unexpectedly brought Herod and Pilate closer together. Pilate's decision to punish Jesus, despite his innocence, reflects the pressure he faced from Jewish leaders and the tense atmosphere in Jerusalem during Passover. Pilate was focused on maintaining order and stability. Ultimately, he prioritized political convenience over justice, allowing Jesus to be treated unfairly even though he had done nothing wrong. Interestingly, there was a hidden custom during the Passover festival in Rome. Asterisk, asterisk, the trial of faith, asterisk, asterisk. In ancient Rome, during the Passover festival, there was a fascinating custom where the governor pardoned one prisoner chosen by the people. Governor Pilate found himself in a difficult situation, having to choose between two men, Barabbas, known for causing trouble, and Jesus Christ, whom some believed to be the chosen one. Pilate sensed that jealousy played a role in bringing Jesus before him. So, Pilate turned to the crowd and asked them a crucial question. Who should I release, Barabbas or Jesus, called the Messiah? This moment is captured in the Gospel of Matthew, where Pilate, the judge, grapples with a perplexing dilemma. Adding to the tension, Pilate's wife had a troubling dream that convinced her of Jesus' innocence, and she urgently warned her husband against condemning him. Despite this, Pilate's decision failed to satisfy the high priests and elders. They were determined to protect their reputation and see Jesus executed. Their intense desire to spill Jesus' blood led them to rally a small mob to their side, creating a chaotic scene for the trial. This gripping tale paints a vivid picture of the political and religious tensions of the time, with Pilate caught in the middle. Amid the confusion and uproar, something unexpected happened. The leaders and the crowd, in a surprising turn of events, pleaded for the release of Barabbas, a known criminal who had committed serious crimes like murder and rebellion. This raises a puzzling question. Why would Pilate even consider letting a guilty man like Barabbas go? What compelled the chief priests and elders, who were tasked with upholding justice, to demand Barabbas' release while advocating for Jesus' condemnation? Perplexed by this peculiar request, Pilate sought clarification from the crowd. However, instead of reconsidering, they clamored even louder, insisting on Jesus' death by crucifixion. This marked the first explicit mention of crucifixion during the trials. Troubled by their unwavering insistence, Pilate questioned the reason behind their adamant stance. He asserted that he found no wrongdoing in Jesus deserving such a severe punishment. Pilate proposed a milder penalty for Jesus, underscoring his innocence, a central theme in Jesus' teachings. Nonetheless, the crowd's outcry only intensified, demanding Jesus' crucifixion until Pilate had no recourse but to yield to their demands. To absolve himself of responsibility for Jesus' fate, Pilate theatrically washed his hands in front of the crowd. Subsequently, he released Barabbas, a troublemaker accused of violence and murder, as the crowd desired. Meanwhile, Jesus was handed over to them. But was Jesus truly guilty of the charges levied by the Jewish leaders? They accused him of transgressing their religious laws, such as healing on the Sabbath. Whenever Jesus visited the synagogue, the Pharisees and legal experts scrutinized his every move, hoping he would slip up. They eagerly anticipated him healing someone on the Sabbath, eager to catch him in the act. Their question to him, "Is it permissible to heal on the Sabbath?" was a trap, intended to prompt him into admitting wrongdoing. In some accounts, such as those found in Mark and Luke, Jesus initiates a profound dialogue by questioning the validity of healing on the Sabbath. This period was marked by significant debate among Jewish religious authorities regarding Sabbath observance. However, in Matthew's narrative of Jesus, he presents the story with remarkable clarity, ensuring accessibility for all audiences. Jesus doesn't merely convey his message directly. Rather, he paints a vivid scene that resonates with his listeners. He illustrates a scenario where a sheep falls into a pit on the Sabbath, prompting his audience to envision themselves in that predicament and contemplate whether they would assist the distressed animal. Yet, Jesus' message transcends mere consideration of animal welfare. He underscores the principle that prioritizing acts of kindness outweighs strict adherence to religious regulations. His aim is to convey that demonstrating compassion holds greater significance, even if it entails deviating from established religious norms. To further emphasize his point, Jesus performs a remarkable act. He restores a man's withered hand, transforming it into strength and health. However, instead of receiving applause, the religious leaders, particularly the Pharisees, become incensed. Their resentment toward Jesus intensifies because he challenges their authority and engages in actions they find incomprehensible. Their animosity deepens further as Jesus disregards their stringent Sabbath regulations. Tensions escalate when the Pharisees, influential Jewish leaders, join forces with the Herodians, supporters of King Herod, to devise a scheme against Jesus. This unexpected and unfavorable partnership forms with the sole aim of undermining Jesus. While numerous stories recount healings that took place on the Sabbath, one particular healing stands out. Asterisk, asterisk, the Sabbath healing asterisk, asterisk. The Gospels recount instances where Jesus performs healings on the Sabbath, a sacred day designated for rest and worship. Such actions often spark contention with the religious leaders. However, in one notable story in Luke, Jesus heals someone on the Sabbath without any reported confrontation. This time, the healing occurred in a private residence rather than a public setting like a synagogue. Despite being aware of the Pharisees' Sabbath regulations, why did Jesus choose to heal on that specific day? When Jesus performed healings on the Sabbath, he wasn't violating God's law, but rather challenging the Pharisees' interpretation and application of it. In Matthew 5:17 of the Bible, Jesus clarifies that his mission is not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. The primary reason Jesus healed on the Sabbath was out of necessity. People required his assistance. In doing so, Jesus also aimed to expose the hypocrisy in the Pharisees' religious practices. He sought to impart the lesson that prioritizing love and compassion should always take precedence, even if it meant contravening certain man-made regulations. On 3 distinct occasions, Jesus encountered opposition when his healing actions sparked debates. Jesus highlighted the irony of the Pharisees' selective application of compassion by drawing attention to their willingness to tend to their animals on the Sabbath, a practice deemed acceptable by the Pharisees in their agricultural society. He emphasized the inconsistency in their readiness to work for the sake of animals, while questioning their reluctance to extend the same compassion to fellow human beings. Jesus exemplified this point by questioning whether, on the Sabbath, they would hesitate to untie their ox or donkey to lead it to water, as recounted in Luke 13:15. In verse 16, he highlighted their double standard, rebuking their reluctance to extend assistance to a daughter of Abraham. Jesus' actions further challenged the religious leaders' interpretation of Sabbath laws. He posed a pivotal inquiry: is it permissible on the Sabbath to do good or to cause harm, to save a life or to destroy it? By performing healings on the Sabbath, Jesus confronted the leaders with the fundamental principles of morality and compassion. Their silence in response to his query conveyed their unwillingness or inability to recognize the righteousness of performing good deeds, even on the Sabbath. Jesus' healing acts served as a tangible demonstration that prioritizing kindness and preserving life supersedes rigid adherence to Sabbath regulations. Conversely, exploiting Sabbath rules as a pretext for harm or cruelty was depicted as a distortion of divine law. Jesus frequently healed on the Sabbath to underscore the underlying purpose of the day set aside for rest. The Sabbath wasn't solely about offering praise to God, it also served to alleviate the burdens of humanity. In the book of Mark, it is stated that the Sabbath was instituted for the benefit of humanity, not the other way around. It provided people with an opportunity to recuperate after a hectic week and to shift their focus from daily chores to worshiping God. When Jesus performed healings on the Sabbath, it aligned with the divine intention for that day. This narrative serves as a reminder that our stubbornness can sometimes lead us astray from what truly matters. It underscores the importance for individuals to periodically examine their beliefs and ensure they align with biblical teachings. Interestingly, Jesus faced numerous accusations from the Romans, who struggled to grasp the deeper meanings behind his words and actions. Asterisk, asterisk, Jesus, radical message of redemption. Asterisk, asterisk. One such accusation against Jesus was that he purportedly claimed he could destroy the temple and rebuild it within 3 days. This allegation carried significant implications, as any interference with the sacred temple was considered blasphemy, punishable by death. It would also expose Jesus as a charlatan. However, Jesus' statement carried a profound significance. Throughout the Gospels, he consistently spoke about his imminent death and resurrection. He comprehended his divine purpose, which transcended earthly power struggles like those with the Romans, focusing instead on fulfilling a higher calling. However, his disciples held different expectations. They anticipated Jesus to be the long-awaited Messiah who would establish a tangible kingdom on earth, reinstating the throne of King David in Jerusalem. Yet, Jesus challenged their perceptions. He indeed would reign as the promised Messiah, but his path to kingship would be paved through sacrifice, not through force. As for the significance of Jesus dining with sinners, it was a deliberate action to exemplify his mission. Upon calling Matthew to follow him, Jesus partook in a meal with numerous tax collectors and sinners at Matthew's residence. This act symbolized Jesus' message of redemption and inclusivity. It conveyed that he came not for the self-righteous, but for those who acknowledged their need for spiritual healing. Essentially, it highlighted the essence of Jesus' teachings: love, forgiveness, and inclusion for all. Matthew, formerly a tax collector, had surrounded himself with fellow sinners who had now become his companions. They were drawn to Jesus, and Matthew eagerly sought to introduce them to him. However, the scribes and Pharisees, harboring disdain for tax collectors, voiced their disapproval. Nevertheless, Jesus persisted in spending time with these sinners, perfectly aligning with his mission to seek and save the lost. During Jesus' era, rabbis and spiritual leaders commanded considerable respect in Jewish society, particularly the Pharisees, renowned for their strict adherence to religious law and tradition. They were revered as exemplars of righteousness, with the populace looking up to them. However, they distanced themselves from individuals they deemed as sinners, those who did not conform to their stringent regulations. It was unprecedented for religious figures of Jesus' time to associate with tax collectors, notorious for their corruption and collaboration with the despised Romans. Nonetheless, Jesus intentionally chose to share meals with sinners, emphasizing the availability of repentance and forgiveness. As Jesus' ministry expanded, his popularity among society's marginalized also grew, offering them hope and inclusion in ways previously unimaginable. When Matthew became closely associated with Jesus, it was natural for Jesus to spend more time with society's outcasts. It was expected that Jesus would associate with tax collectors and sinners because, as noted in Mark 21:17, he came not for the righteous, but for the sinners. Jesus recognized that to reach those who were lost, he needed to establish a connection with them. During a feast at Matthew's house, Jesus defied societal norms and challenged the Pharisees' strict regulations for achieving righteousness. By dining with sinners, Jesus showcased that he valued people's inner beings over their societal standing. While the Pharisees judged individuals based on their past actions, Jesus perceived their spiritual needs. Throughout his ministry, Jesus consistently extended his hand to those in need. He surprised his disciples by engaging in conversation with a Samaritan woman, offering forgiveness to an immoral woman, and assisting a Syrophoenician woman. He even reached out to touch a leper and visited the home of Zacchaeus, a tax collector, demonstrating his readiness to embrace the marginalized. Repeatedly, Jesus demonstrated compassion towards the marginalized and exhibited love for those society deemed unlovable. His actions epitomized his belief in transcending cultural boundaries and acknowledging the humanity in all individuals. Jesus surpassed customs and cultural norms, prioritizing compassion above all else. The compassionate Savior. Jesus embarked on a mission to rescue those who had strayed. He remained undeterred by societal disapproval rooted in customs or cultural norms, focusing solely on the salvation of souls, a task of paramount importance. As stated in John 3:17, God dispatched Jesus not to condemn humanity for their mistakes, but to deliver them from their errors. Compassion permeated every aspect of Jesus' ministry as he tirelessly advocated for others and imparted the teachings of God. Unafraid to associate with those deemed undesirable by society, Jesus illustrated that everyone merits kindness and empathy through his interactions and shared meals. This profound gesture left a lasting impression on those labeled as sinners. they beheld Jesus for who he truly was, a virtuous individual, deeply connected to God and capable of extraordinary deeds. His miracles served as tangible evidence of his compassion, and his sincere concern for others was evident to all. Jesus paid little heed to society's conventions regarding whom he should associate with. He resembled a compassionate shepherd, tirelessly seeking out those in need, regardless of their circumstances or past actions. When Matthew hosted a gathering, Jesus eagerly participated, seizing the opportunity to convey God's message of love to those who needed it most. Despite facing severe criticism from the staunch adherents of societal norms, Jesus remained steadfast, undeterred by their disapproval. Unlike the Pharisees, who demanded individuals change before extending acceptance, Jesus embraced everyone as they were. He reached out to them in their situations, offering kindness and empathy. In a particularly poignant episode involving a woman caught in adultery, Jesus exemplified love and forgiveness. Picture Jesus teaching in the temple, having just descended from the Mount of Olives, where he likely engaged in prayer and contemplation. Suddenly, a group of scribes and Pharisees stormed in, disrupting his serene discourse, dragging along a woman accused of adultery, claiming to have caught her in the act. During that era, if someone committed adultery, they risked being executed by stoning, as stipulated in Deuteronomy 22:22. Jesus faced a dilemma. If he declared the woman innocent, he might be accused of disregarding the law. Yet, if he advocated for her punishment, he could face scrutiny from the Roman authorities, who held the ultimate power over life and death. Additionally, such a decision could provoke criticism from Jewish leaders. This narrative presents Jesus with a moral quandary, testing his wisdom and compassion. The crowd's readiness to stone the woman highlights the severity of ancient justice systems, where punishment was often harsh and unforgiving. Jesus' response not only underscores his belief in forgiveness and redemption, but also confronts the hypocrisy of those who hastily pass judgment while overlooking their own flaws. Furthermore, this incident demonstrates Jesus' adeptness in navigating complex political and legal scenarios. By neither absolving the woman's actions nor endorsing her punishment, Jesus circumvents the snares set by both religious law and Roman jurisdiction. His reaction transcends mere legalistic frameworks, emphasizing instead the significance of mercy and empathy in human relationships. The Pharisees and scribes, prominent figures in ancient Judea, wielded considerable religious influence and were regarded as authorities on Jewish law and ethics. However, their intentions in presenting the adulterous woman to Jesus are subject to scrutiny. Some scholars propose that their motives may have been to entrap Jesus or assess his adherence to Jewish legal principles. The setting of this event adds intrigue. It unfolded within the temple precincts in Jerusalem, likely in the bustling court of the Gentiles, where individuals from diverse backgrounds congregated. This public arena heightens the tension of the encounter as Jesus faces interrogation before a varied audience, comprising both allies and skeptics. Furthermore, Jesus' response, stooping to write in the dust, has sparked widespread speculation and scholarly discourse. While the precise significance of his actions remains ambiguous, some interpretations suggest that Jesus may have alluded to Old Testament passages concerning judgment and forgiveness, thereby underscoring themes of justice and mercy. In the crucifixion narrative, Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, assumes a pivotal role. His decision to condemn Jesus to death, despite finding no fault in him, highlights the political friction between Roman authorities and Jewish religious leaders. Pilate's hesitance to intervene underscores the intricate dynamics of power and the pressures of political expediency prevalent in ancient times. Moreover, the manner of Jesus' death, crucifixion, was a brutal form of execution typically reserved for the most reviled criminals and insurgents within Roman society. It was a harrowing and degrading method of punishment devised to inflict maximal suffering and shame. Jesus' voluntary acceptance of such a fate underscores the profound depth of his sacrifice and unwavering dedication to his divine mission. What are your reflections on the intriguing revelations regarding Pontius Pilate's letter concerning Jesus' demise? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you found this video insightful, don't forget to show your support by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel.